Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stormworks video. In today's tutorial we are going to be showing you how to use a microcontroller here in Stormworks. Now I'll go over the basics of it, show you how to get one all set up, along with that how to wire it, and then actually how to go ahead and implement it into a example. So hopefully by the end of the tutorial you should have a basic understanding of how to make your own and actually go ahead and start creating your different microcontrollers here in Stormworks. So with that all said, let's go ahead and get started. We're back here in the workbench itself. You can see in the top right corner we have the button to go ahead and actually go to the microcontroller editor. But before we go there, I just want to talk a little bit about what microcontrollers can be used for. Now, the way I look at it is you can do three things with it. One, you can reduce the amount of logic or logic component pieces that you need in your creation to operate certain things. So for example, in front of me you can see I have a custom door. Normally what you would need is to get this working would be a switch box, along with that number block, and along with that a NOT block to control the lock on it. So you need three pieces of logic. Now, if you can imagine, if you have several of these doors, that's quite a bit of logic you have to go ahead and connect up and also place down. So one way is to reduce the size of logic that you need for a component, and in a way making one piece of logic to control everything that you need. The second way I look at microcontrollers is to go ahead and actually control signals between different creations. Now this is done through the actual new thing they've gone ahead and added, which is going to be this composite node, which is on the actual connectors themselves. So you can see here we have a composite send and composite receive. So this is another way so we can send signals between different creations or vehicles. And the third way is to go ahead and actually make your custom logic. When I mean custom is that, for example, you could create your own PID that would have its own sliders. So for example, you can go ahead and add a dial or a gauge to that actual logic piece that you can go ahead and customize to the sensitivity, for example, of a PID instead of going ahead into the settings. So I look at it as three ways. Now for this tutorial on this, for example, I'm going to be showing off is the actual custom door components and how to get these three pieces of logic blocks into one piece that we can use for the store itself. Now to start with, we go ahead, as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of this. We don't need it anymore. We're going to go ahead to our microcontroller. First things first is you're presented with the actual schematic on the left, and then you also have your three little tabs on the right. First off is your properties. This is going to be the name, the description, the size of the microcontroller. This is in blocks, so 6 by 6 or 1 by 1. For the tutorial we are going to go by a 1 by let's do a 3 by 1, for example. We'll go with that for now. I'm going to call it the microcontroller door module. Fantastic. And then no description. Logic. This is where we go ahead and add the nodes to it. Now, obviously for a door, we'll need an on-off input to open and close the door using a toggle button or a push button. So we'll use that input, no problem at all. We can actually name it and put a description on it. I'm not going to. We can then go ahead and we obviously need a number output. So I'm going to go ahead and do number, change that to output. And this is going to go ahead and actually control the door itself. As you can see, I can move this around wherever I want. And the last one we're going to do is going to be an output. And that is going to be for the actual lock itself. So when obviously the door is opened, we don't want the lock on. And then when the door is closed, we want the lock on. So that's going to be our output for our doors. We'll go ahead and change that. You can see if you actually hover over these, I'll tell you what they are, and you can actually double click on them and they'll link you straight to this. This makes it very useful if you have quite a few nodes on here. You can actually quickly just jump to it instead of scrolling up and down this menu itself. And then lastly, we're going to move on to the symbol. This is where you can go ahead and actually paint or design the symbol of your logic block. At the moment, it doesn't show up on the actual logic. It just shows up in your actual inventory screen, so you can have a picture of what you want. So for example, I could do that, and then because we're doing a door component, I could go ahead and almost make like a little door there. Fantastic. The next part of this is actually going to be the logic piece itself. Now this is where you go into the little schematic here and you can play around with the different nodes themselves. So you can see here we have our inputs and outputs. So we have our inputs, which is going to be over there, and we have our two outputs. One is going to be for the number and one is going to be for the door on and off. Now what we go is we pretty much replicate the same logic pieces that we had out on the door earlier inside this component itself. So first off, we're going to need a switch box, and that's going to be to control the door, whether it's going to turn one way or the other way. So pretty simple. On off button going to the switch box itself, and then the output value is going to go and control the door. Now, because when it's closed it needs a 0, we don't need to connect the off to anything. We can go ahead if we wanted to and do just a constant number to that block itself. That's one way if you wanted to do it. So you can go ahead and here and find the constant number block. Somewhere around here, yeah, constant number. So you could go ahead and put either a 1 or a -1. However, if you wanted to change that, you would have to come into the screen and change it to a 1 or -1 by going here and changing it. However, I don't want that. I'm going to, for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use a custom slider. So we'll go ahead and find that quickly. There we go, property slider. There we go. So property slider, we just go ahead and place that down and connect that onto our on signal. Now, if you go into the properties of this, you can see here we bring down the property screen. We can go ahead and customize this to what we want. So for example, I'm going to do a -1 as a minimum value, a +1 as the high value. Increments, I want it to move in 1 increments, and I want the default to be 0. Now we'll cover this. I'll tell you why we're doing this a little bit more when we actually go ahead and put this logic down. Now that takes care of the door. So when we press this on off button, it's going to go ahead and send a 1 or 0 or -1 signal over to our door and open and close it as we want in whichever direction we want. And that's going to be by customizing the slider. Now going on to the actual lock piece. So we say, okay, well, if this is on, we don't want our lock on. So we're going to be using a not signal or not block for that. So we'll go ahead and find the not block. Simply go ahead, place it down, connect it to this. If you wanted to, you could connect it to the threshold gate. So when the threshold gate is saying 0, you want it to lock, and when it's not putting 0, you could do it to unlock. So that's another way of doing it. So that's pretty much about it for this. The logic for this. This is a very basic one. You can get to much more detail. There's a whole bunch of different options you have here, but it's very simple detailing. Go ahead, save this now. I'm going to go ahead and save it as door example. Fantastic. Go back to our actual build here or creation itself. I'm going to scroll down to our logic. So I'm going to go ahead and find it. It's over here. Door module control. We can go ahead and place that down. So it's just a nice simple 1 block piece. Answers all our problems. We can now go ahead and connect that up. So first off, on off switch goes to the actual control here. We then have a number input, which is going to go to the door itself, and then our signal that's going to go ahead and control the lock. Pretty simple. Yeah. We can now go ahead and collect our select. Go to our logic piece and tell it to either go -1 or +1, and this will obviously affect the direction of the door. Instead of going ahead and changing number values of blocks and so on and so forth, we can just move the slider as we want. 1, 0, -1, up to us. So I'm going to go to -1, which means the door is going to open away from us. Perfect. We've got that all connected up. We can now go ahead and spawn this in. Press the button, and you can see the door goes ahead and opens. Press it again, door goes ahead and closes and locks. Pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. So that's one way you can actually go ahead and use the new microprocessors or microcontrollers to your advantage. Now, this, as I said, this is a very basic system and a very crude example of one, but it pretty much covers the basics and gives you the ideas of the microcontrollers. Obviously, you can get a little bit more imaginative, and we will do more examples and more videos on getting a little bit more advanced into this, but I thought I'll just go ahead and cover the basics. So I think we'll go ahead and end today's video there, guys. As always, comment below what you'd like to see in any of our future videos. While you're there, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to follow any of my future content. And finally, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it somewhat enjoyable and entertaining and informative as always, and we'll see you in the next one.